All right, brothers, welcome back. We're in week 4 and we're talking about release. This is our final week, and so we're going to wrap everything up. But I do want to just reiterate a little bit about last week. If you haven't listened to there, I encourage you to listen to it in its entirety because these are the roadblocks. These are the roadblocks that get in the way of us releasing the pain and the unforgiveness and the stuff that we are holding. So we're going to dive in. Some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it's letting go. So as men, as being masculine, as being macho, we pride ourselves in the ability to carry a lot of weight, carry a lot of pain, and carry a lot of different stuff. In actuality, the real strength is the ability to recognize the pain and to release the pain. And so I want to thoroughly smash that belief system right from the beginning here, is that there in no way is it seem, macho or powerful to be carrying around all that baggage, right? And that the real strength is really looking at those things and saying, you know what, I don't want to live this way. And then I'm going to release these things. I'm going to let them go so I can live the abundant life that Jesus is talking about, and so that I can begin to walk in freedom and not be stressed out all the time. Now, I thoroughly believe, and I know I've heard this somewhere before, but stress is the ultimate killer of men, right? And that is that most all diseases and mental health issues and things that come upon us are related to stress, okay? That is that we are carrying too much weight, we are carrying too much things, we have too many secrets, we have all of these things going on in our life that are weighing us down and causing us a lot of pressure. And what does that do? We snap, right? We break, we crack. And so it's important to really look at the load that we're carrying and ask ourselves, is there stress fractures in my life? Is there stress fractures in my marriage? Is there stress fractures, in my business and whatever? And say, am I carrying too much load? Am I carrying too much pressure? One of the greatest revelations that I've had in probably this year was that my plate was my responsibility. And that is if there's too much put upon me, I ask myself, who's in charge of that plate? And that is, I had to take responsibility for the things that were put on me because I allowed them to be so. And so the same is true in our lives, in the amount of stress that we are holding and the tension. All of that comes to a personal choice to either cause or to allow those things to happen. So we have to ask ourselves, are we going to continue to live stressed out all the time and have too much on our plate? So letting go helps you live a more peaceful state of mind and helps you restore balance. It allows others to be responsible for themselves and for us to take our hands off the situations that don't belong to us. This frees us from unnecessary stress. So everything that we've talked about previously here, knowing your identity, taking responsibility, practicing awareness, acceptance, all of these different things bring us to a place where we recognize what is in our realm of control, and then we surrender or we take our hands off of the things that are beyond our control. Just that alone will decrease our stress just by itself. But understanding and recognize that is really the key to living in a more peaceful state of mind, of which we are talking about here. So the Bible says this: since we are surrounded by such a great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out before us. And so I want to dive into the scripture and really get into the depths of letting go of the weights. Okay. Now, the writer of Hebrews said this: they are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. That reminds me of participating in a sport or in an activity where there is a large audience overseeing and looking down upon us. Now, if it doesn't scare you, that we are, of course, under observation in many ways and fashion. that should definitely inspire us to let go of some of these things. It's much like this, in the crowd, and somebody is deciding to run a race, and they put a 100-pound suit on, and they go and endeavor to win the sprint. Okay. And that's how silly this mindset is that I'm going to take all this weight upon me, and then I'm going to in this race, and I think I'm going to win. But the reality is, of course, is that we don't win. We collapse, right? We don't even finish the race. We take years and years off of our life, and we cause ourselves a lot of pain and a lot of sorrow by holding on to these weights. So, surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, he said, throw off everything that hinders, or lay aside every weight that easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out before us. When I was trying to lose weight, I was exercising with a couple other men that weren't very serious, and I was very serious at the time. And we met every morning for accountability, and they pretty much just wanted to go for an easy stroll and a nice walk. We did go up a mountain, which was not very intense, too much by itself. After you do it repeatedly, you get kind of used to it. I'm thinking, what can I do to challenge myself? And so I was like, okay, I'll walk around with 50 pounds. And I did that for a good period of time, and then I thought maybe I'll challenge myself some more. And so I took another 50 pounds on, and then I decided to hike up the hill. And I tell you what, man, walking up with 100 pounds is far different than walking up with nothing. And I made it up to the top of the mountain, but it was this strange experience when I took the weights off and I began to walk. It was almost like I was on cloud nine, but it was like I was super, super light, and almost like this floating type thing, and it was very freeing. And what I want you to understand is this, is that that's the way we do life. We do life, and we carry all of these pains, we carry all of these hurts, and they're really weighing us down. And letting go of those things will be the most freeing thing that we've ever experienced. And we will begin to walk with freedom from those things and begin to really just kind of float in a more easier fashion. Set those things down. We are saying that, I'm not, these things are heavy. I know that the pain that they're causing. I know the stress that they're producing in my life. And I want to lay these down. You see, throughout life, we carry this backpack, and we pick up things along the way. Now, we pick up things a lot of times subconsciously. There are things that belief systems and subconscious things that have happened when we were young, and they teach us how to cope and behave in a certain manner, and we get dead set in certain belief systems and stuff. That being said, there's a whole lot of stuff to unpack. That is the way I view life and going through adulthood and maturing and growing, in my spiritual life, is that I am going, as I walk, as I go forward and make progress, I'm going to begin to unpack some of these things. I'm going to begin to see some of these triggers and some of these belief systems that begin to pop up, because now I'm awake and I'm paying attention. And then I'm going to unpack these, and I'm going to recognize that this is something that I no longer need. Now, I may have put that in my utility of skills because it best served me at the time to be able to cope with different things. But looking at that behavior now, I look at it and it doesn't serve me as the man that I want to become or the man that I want to be. I'll explain to you what I mean by this. Somewhere along the way in childhood, I picked up the mentality of avoiding conflict. Each time there was conflict, there was people that were getting hurt. Cops were being called. There was blood, right? So anytime that there was any sort of conflict, it led in a very painful circumstances in me viewing and witnessing these behaviors. So somewhere along the way, I learned to be steady. And that is, not rock the boat, be a peacemaker, try to keep everybody, happy and keep things stable. And this is something that in my personality, that could be a great strength, but it also became a great weakness as I learned how to cope with my world. That being said, it no longer serves me as a man to go around trying to make everybody happy. It no longer serves me as a man to not see a situation that needs confrontation and try to avoid it. That no longer serves me. In fact, I find that I have to review that tendency and begin to go against everything that comes natural because that behavior no longer suits me. So we have these. We have these different things that we picked up along the way, and they're not suitable as a growing man who is maturing and beginning to take his authority. They just no longer benefit us in any way. And so we can decide that we are going to lay these things down. It doesn't matter what it is. And we're going to go into all these different things, but we have to ask ourselves, is carrying all this baggage worth it? Now, there are people that want to relive their trauma over and over, and they want to get to, I say this a little facetiously, please forgive me, but they wanted to get into their 5, 6, 7-year-old boy and begin to feel all the pain that boy felt. And not only that, but they want to feel that repeatedly. And they'll go into triggering moments to take them back to that place so they can soak in this 7, 8-year-old boy thing. And this is very contrary to what we're talking about here. We're talking about seeing the pain, recognizing it, and saying, you know what, I'm going to let this go because this no longer serves me. Going back to victimhood repeatedly over and over to get in touch with the victim is no way to serve you as a man. It's going to steal your strength and it's going to steal your power, is what it's going to do. The Bible says this, to get rid. Get rid. This is very forceful language. There's not any debate about what the Bible is talking about here, but it says to get rid of all bitterness, all rage, all brawling, slander, and every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate and forgive one another as Christ forgave you. And I want to attach you to the power of forgiveness right here. That is knowing and understanding the forgiveness that has been placed upon you. Okay? And then the admonition to go and do likewise. So here's what we do. We experience the reality of everything that God has for us. And that is that He loves us, He forgives us, all of these different things. And that experience is supposed to transcend into doing the same for others. And now, first, it has to be done to ourselves. That is, if God forgives me, then I can forgive myself. Because He loves me, then I can begin to love myself. And when I begin to forgive myself and begin to love myself, I then have the ability to begin to forgive and love others. So it's the mindset of what God does in me, He can do through me. But if I don't experience the reality of it, it's going to be hard to flow through me. So this is what he's talking about here, is forgive each other just as Christ forgave you. And that is that we get in touch with, we get thoroughly acquainted with everything that we have in the gospel, everything that we have that has been given to us as His children, and get thoroughly acquainted with the glorious things that that has happened to us, what manner of love that has bestowed upon us that we should be called the children of God, right? And get in touch with what he has done so we can experience it, so it can begin to flow through us. Now, the reality is that if we're unable to forgive and we're unable to forgive ourselves, it is a clear expression and indication that we are not thoroughly acquainted with the forgiveness of God. In fact, we view him as holding our sins over us. He's very mean and he's very demanding. The reality is that we become like the God that we believe in. That is, if he is not loving, if he's not forgiving, if he's not an assertive father, then he could be something completely different. And that is, he could be a hard taskmaster, he could be a judgmental God, and then so shall we do to others. Now, the same is true is that he could be an all-permissive God, he could be your homie, and, isn't concerned about lifestyles and drugs and all of these different things, and that's what flows through your lifestyle. And so we have to really get acquainted with who God is and experience the reality so we can begin to manifest that. So get rid of. There's no question about that, right? Get rid of it. We read the last verse, set aside the weights, lay aside the weights. What are we supposed to do with these things? Question. What are we supposed to do with these weights? What are we supposed to do with the baggage? And what are we supposed to do with all of these things that the Bible talks about? Get rid of. I don't know about you, but during this Christmas season, as you get more stuff in, you begin to purge, right? So I filled up the van with trash, and I'm going around and I'm just like scavenging, looking for trash, looking for things to get rid of, things that are no longer needed. And the fact and the reality is because I don't have room for that. And so that's the mindset we need to have spiritually, is that we're taking on all these new attributes, these new attitudes, these new mindsets, right? And they are directly challenging to the old. And what we got to do is begin to look at that and say, you know what? This is no longer serving me as a man. This is no longer causing me to reach my full potential. This is keeping me stuck in victimhood and pauperhood. And that this is no longer... there's no longer room for this life. The reality of what God begins to do is that as he begins to move in our life and as we begin to grow and as he begins to feel, okay, as he begins to fill us up, the impurities fly off. The best way you can get dirt out of a cup, you fill it with water and all the impurities rise and begin to overflow the top. And so this is what begins to happen. We have to make a conscious choice in this situation, though. Say, you know what? I'm going to set these things down and I'm going to get rid of these things. So get rid of bitterness. Now, this is a very interesting word in the Greek. Its very definition comes from poison. Now, this is a substance that kills you, right? We know what poison is, like strychnine and all those different stuff. There are poison that kills you or that impairs you in a very severe fashion. This is what holding on to the pain does. When we hold on to the pain, we hold on to the anger and the animosity and the all the pain that person caused us. This in turn becomes poison to us. And we think holding on to these things is going to somehow the other person, or that holding on to those things is going to somehow bring justice. But the reality is holding on to those things is only consuming the poison. And it's something that is destructive. It is something that is harmful. But most importantly, poison is something that limits your full capacity. That it keeps you behaving and acting in a manner that is not to full capacity. That's what the poison does. And on to poison, we're holding on to that bitterness and to that pain. Next one he mentions is rage. What is interesting about studying this word is that it goes back to the word thermos or thermometer, but then it says to red hot, like to burn. Okay, it is a temperature that is burning, red, fuming, flaming, right? And that is the anger that we have towards an unjust situation that it has upon us. And so bitterness, having the poison inside of our life, and it leads to that wrath and to that anger. So much so, by experience, that you visualize and you dream about hurting that person, right? And that's the path that this bitterness takes us to the rage and to the visualization of exacting revenge. Okay, it takes us to the anger where we begin to contemplate ways of lashing out. The next one is brawling and slander and malice. These are all the things that he said that we should let go of, that we should release. Slander comes when we begin to harm another's reputation just because we have anger or bitterness to them, and we begin to make up stories, right? This comes from a heart that is filled with hate. Now, this is a very harsh thing, but if we allow the bitterness to continue, what we're allowing to take place is for the hate to continue in our heart. And we're holding on to those feelings and we're stirring them up. And this can lead to nothing but pain and trouble, poison. We're going to go through real quick for the next couple minutes and talk about the different things that we should let go of. And then we're going to wrap it up with how to do this. Okay, you come this far, this 4 weeks, seeing the different areas of this trauma and this pain and how it plays out, and how healing takes place. And you see all the different things that we can hold on to. First is the past. These are things that we have done that cause us regret. They give us a little bit of shame, a little bit of guilt. And they are things that we cannot change. They're not within our range, right? They're not within our sphere. Now, it's nice that we have a good heart and we look at those situations and say, you know what, if I was given the opportunity, I would have done differently. That's good. That's fine to have that mindset. But the mindset of totally looking at the past and beginning to beat yourself up for all of your mistakes means that you're holding on tight to the past. And you need to let go of it. Second one is mistakes. Now, this is when you go back into the past, what are you doing? You're analyzing your behavior and you're saying, I wish I didn't do this. And that's where the regret comes from. And it comes from the mistakes that you have made. That is a time when you had an action or a behavior that you're not particularly proud of. Lapse in judgment and error, right? And we all have these. To say that we don't have these is to remove us from our humanity. So we all have these things in our past where we had a faulty judgment. And the reality is that we cannot do anything about what had happened. Now, what we can do is say, you know what, this is not going to be in my future. And that past lapse in judgment that I have learned from my mistakes, and I've seen the errors of my way, and I'm going to make different decisions going forward. Okay, that's really important. Relationships. We're going to go through these a little fast because we're running out of time. But relationships. There are relationships that we had in the past that were very entangling and part of who we are. And part of letting go of the past and letting go of the mistakes is sometimes letting go of the relationships that have caused us a lot of pain. Now, I've talked to you last week about when you forgive those things and you forgive things that happen in that relationship, that doesn't mean those relationships need to continue. and that you can go ahead and stand in your boundaries and be assertive and say, you know what, those relationships that have caused me a lot of pain don't need to continue into the future. And you can take a stand and do that. Addictions. That one's self-evident. We'll continue on because this is what we're thoroughly acquainted with. We know it. So hurts, emotional pain, wounds. I'm going to go through these really quick now. Weaknesses, faults, defects in character, excuses, reasons, justifications, hate, hostility, fear, anger, control, power, or authority to guide and manage something that you don't have no business guiding and managing. Okay? Resentment, offended at something regarded as wrong that happened to you. Outcomes, thinking that a certain outcome is guaranteed to you. And of course, expectations. This is where hope. There are some expectations that we have that we shouldn't have, that we should probably let go of. And lastly is false beliefs, which we are going to dive into for, in the future for a whole 4 weeks. So I'm not going to touch too much here. But the reality is, in all of these things, they can have addictions, different relationships, hate, fear, all of these different things that we hold on to. And they can cause us a lot of pain. And we begin to wonder why we're not thriving, wondering why we are not all that we could be or reaching our full potential. And the reality is because there is too much stuff in our backpack. We want to sprint. We want to live the abundant life. We want to be free. And the only thing keeping us from doing that, from winning the race, if you will, is all the baggage that we are carrying. And so we have to make a decision that we are going to let it go. How do we do that? I'm glad you asked. We come all of these 4 weeks to come to this final conclusion. How do I let it go? First, for me, was understanding that I have the freedom to do so. That is coming out of victimization, coming out of that mindset and saying, you know what, I have a choice. That is that I could choose my response from here on out. I could choose whether I go onto the path of healing, or I could choose on whether I rehearse and nurse and all of those different things about those wounds that have taken place in my life. I could go ahead and live there for the rest of my life and put on my victim card and hand out my excuse cards and do all of these different things and feel somehow justifiable because these are the cards that I've been dealt. This is what I got to work with, right? And so first and foremost, I know that I am free to do so. As simple as say, this is my baggage, this is what I'm carrying here, right? As simple as looking at this and saying, you know what? I don't want that anymore. And so knowing that I am free to do so. Now with this comes acknowledging and expressing the anger involved in this. That is that you need to be real with yourself about the situation that happened. You need to be real with yourself about how you feel about that situation. And really be okay with the emotions that you are experiencing. And that I would do, of course, in a safe space with a safe person, in a safe environment, so those emotions don't lead you to hurting yourself or to hurting another person or to lashing out in anger, right? But the reality is that we need to be okay with the anger. We need to understand that something unjustifiable did happen to us, and actually feel the pain. That's what we're afraid to do in all this. And that's why we sedate a lot, and that's why we numb, because there are certain things that we're just not willing to face. So be willing to experience the emotions, to identify the emotions involved with the situation, acknowledge it and express anger, and then come to the point where, you know what, I'm going to take ownership. Now, that doesn't mean in any way that I contributed to what happened to me. That doesn't mean in any way that I am personally responsible for the event. We have to understand that. But taking ownership from here forward, something did happen to me. I have experienced some pain. Where do I go from here? Now, this is my responsibility, and this is for me to take ownership. I'm going to take ownership of my pain and how I feel about it. Yeah, I'm going to be personally responsible for my healing. And I'm going to begin to do things that actually encourage my growth and my healing, and stop doing things that just dig me further into the pit. So, taking ownership. One thing that was very helpful to me is looking at the situation and removing myself from the situation, begin to practice a form of empathy. And that is this: understanding that when certain things happen to you, especially in your childhood, that they're all about you. That in our me-centered universe, in the way that we view everything had to do with us. Now, coming out of that mindset and looking at it as an adult and facing the reality of this, that it had pretty much nothing to do with you, and that it had everything to do with them and what they were experiencing, right? And so removing ourselves from the equation, my mom and the abuse and us being taken away and all of these different things that happened when I was a young child really had nothing to do with me. I was there present in this chaotic play that I did not start, and I did not cause. Okay, it's important to understand that I was involved in the situation, that I did not orchestrate, I did not plan, and I did not have any control over it, and it really had nothing to do with me. I was a participant in someone else's chaos and someone else's mindset that was messed up. And so as you begin to take on that mindset, you begin to practice just a little bit of empathy. That's all you need, is just a little bit. To understand that hurting people hurt people. And what that means is that the person that hurt me, okay, had severely hurt themselves. And somewhere along the way, they have learned this behavior. And maybe because it happened to them, or we don't really know the full scenario. But if we just have a little bit of empathy and say this: they were a hurting person that hurt me. Because the reality is that we take that same hurt and we go and hurt other people. And this is the way the reality works, that hurting people hurt people. And that's looking at that and looking at my mother and looking where she came from and how she was raised and the trauma that she had and the relationships that she started, all these different things. Then I just begin to get just a tiny dose. You don't need much. And I don't think you should go into deep empathy for your the perpetrator, okay? But if you just have a little bit, you begin to get a knowledge and understanding that it had nothing to do with you and that they were dealing with their own pain. And what they did was a reflection of them, not you. Man, that is so freeing. That is so freeing. This is where the release comes from, and letting go of the pain and being able to talk about it without cracking up. Actually, do something with it. Now, I recommend writing it out, putting it on paper. Once again, you can bury it, you can burn it, you can nail it to the cross. Do something symbolic with it, so you can thoroughly put in your mind that this is separated from you. So you symbolically write out the things that you are holding on to and the pain that it is causing you. And you burn it, okay? You bury it, or you take it to the church and have those nailing to the cross. I'm going to nail this to the cross and I'm going to leave it here. Whatever symbolic gesture that you can do to communicate to yourself and to your mind that this is pain, I am releasing it, and it is in a different location. That's what we got to do. All right, brothers. I've enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to the next series, guys. Peace.